The broadcast should start in a couple of minutes. Thank you. One more minute to go. Thank you. Okay, good morning, everyone. Welcome to today's webinar entitled Secret Sauce and Open Source, the Battle for the Home Wi-Fi Middleware. My name is Adlan Fela, Senior Analyst at Maravedis, and I'll be your host and moderator today. We have still people joining, so I would like to give it maybe a few more seconds to limit the chance for people to join on time. We have a very busy agenda in the next hour, and I'm really privileged to welcome a distinguished group of speakers and panelists from leading organizations that are contributing to solving the home Wi-Fi issues, which are a prerequisite for an efficient, connected smart home. This webinar is being recorded, and the slide deck will be made available. So without further ado, I would like to start. For those who are not familiar with Maravedis, we are a boutique wireless analyst firm since 2002. That's a long time ago. We are based in Miami, Florida, and work with a number of research partners worldwide. This is a sample of some of our work on Wi-Fi, which is really a mix of independent generic reports as well as exciting studies, infographics, etc. If you're interested in discussing how we can help tell your story or uncover market trends, please reach out to us. My immediate agenda before passing on to the guest speakers is would like to have a quick overview on the definition of the problem of the factors affecting home Wi-Fi and why Wi-Fi is so important in the home environment, as well as the pain that it causes to the service providers. This will set the stage for providing some context information and why it's important to tackle those problems in an organized manner through the work of the various associations who are addressing the various pieces of the puzzle. Home Wi-Fi is more complex than it appears from the outside, and it's causing a lot of pain for both consumers and service providers alike. So Wi-Fi enables a connected smart home. Simply said, Wi-Fi is really king in the home. Today, consumers experience their broadband mostly through Wi-Fi. As indicated on the graph on the left, home devices from smart TVs to gaming and thermostats are all connected through some Wi-Fi. Therefore, in the minds of consumers, Wi-Fi equals broadband and broadband equals Wi-Fi. So it's important that the bandwidth to the device is really what matters to the end users. So as a result, service providers are pressured to take responsibility for the in-home Wi-Fi experience through some managed, organized, and secure way. The proliferation of home devices also, as indicated on the right graph, will also increase the need for more managed Wi-Fi. For example, the figures vary by region, but in North America alone, the average number of devices per home is already higher than 8 and will double in the next 4 years. Another important factor is that bandwidth alone is not enough anymore. As the bandwidth requirements increase exponentially with 4K video streaming, virtual reality, and online gaming, lower latency and stability of the connection are becoming the key parts of the home quality of experience, home Wi-Fi quality of experience. So this is an important aspect to note as well. Another important driver is that gigabit broadband is also forcing service providers to make home Wi-Fi better, because the customers that are paying for higher broadband speeds will expect the same speeds on the device. And Wi-Fi cannot be afford to be the bottleneck of those connections. The emergence of Wi-Fi 6 should help provide more efficiency to the equation. Finally, the emergence of IoT represents a great opportunity for service providers to provide a coherent system to onboard and secure those IoT devices in a way that's easy and practical. The model where you have an application SDK on for every device like Nest, smart bulb, smart fridge, it's just not sustainable. Home IoT really requires a unified platform that can be managed, for example, by service providers. What are the factors affecting home Wi-Fi experience? Historically, operators have had little visibility of what is happening in the home Wi-Fi, and therefore have been enabled to diagnose and solve home Wi-Fi related issues. Differentiation of Wi-Fi related degradations from other causes of poor customer experience have also been problematic. In our survey of service providers, we found that the top 3 factors affecting home Wi-Fi experience are poor CPE placement, dead zones due to poor coverage, and neighbor interference. In this context, the use of multiple access points, including a range of 1 or more extenders, is becoming increasingly popular, both in retail mode or provided as a monthly service by the service provider. All these factors result in a poor quality of experience measured in terms of throughput, latency, and stability of the connection. And when QoE does not match customer expectations, they will blame service providers for that, resulting in low net promoter scores. This poor QoE results in calls made to service providers. We estimate that between 30 and 50% of calls to service providers are Wi-Fi related, although the numbers vary by service providers. Those calls represent the cost for the service providers. Subscribers are typically unable to resolve their Wi-Fi issues alone, and they have to contact their service providers. This lack of customer ability to solve Wi-Fi problems results in service providers' high operating costs caused by ineffective or lengthy support calls, costly truck rolls for on-site service, and CPU replacements. According to various operators we spoke to, the average length of a Wi-Fi related call is 20 to 30 minutes, and 10 to 30% of such calls result in a truck roll. The average cost per resolution ticket in North America are presented here for reference. As the issues are escalated to the next level of support, that cost increases, resulting sometimes in the wrong gateway swap or a second visit by a technician, which represent painful OpEx and CapEx for the service providers. The good news is that these issues also bring opportunities for service providers to sell more bandwidth, more extenders, and actually tailor their bandwidth offering to each home because they have visibility of what's going on in the home through those platforms. In this context, the solution for to the issue of Wi-Fi problems include enhanced diagnostics, fault monitoring, troubleshooting, and as we'll see in the upcoming presentations from the work done by the different associations. We just released a research paper on the middleware, which triggered this webinar, and that follows an extensive report on the various vendors and service providers. The paper is now available for purchase and includes market forecasts, so contact us for detail if interested. And now that we have set the stage for the problems to be resolved, we'll look at the various initiatives by the different associations, which cover the whole loop from R&D by Cable Labs all the way to implementation guidelines. We shall see what remains secret sauce and the open source. So without further ado, I would like to introduce our first guest speaker, John Barr, who's principal architect at Cable Labs. John?
Great, thank you, Edley. So, hello everyone. Before I get into my presentation, let me introduce Cable Labs real quick, in case you're not familiar with us. As a leading innovation and R&D lab for the cable industry, Cable Labs creates a global impact through its member companies around the world and its subsidiaries, Curio and UpperAmp. With a state-of-the-art research and innovation facility, we collaborate with the ecosystem of thousands of vendors, and Cable Labs delivers impactful network technologies for the entire industry, really. Cable Labs has also worked closely with many other organizations, including those that are presenting here today with me. So two home Wi-Fi technologies that Cable Labs has developed are Wi-Fi certified EasyMesh and data elements. And let me talk about EasyMesh first. So what is EasyMesh? It's basically a controller managed network that enables coordinated functions. And those functions are things like steering clients to the best AP, choosing the best channel for each AP in the home, avoiding interference and load balancing clients across the APs. These are features that we've come to expect in enterprise wireless LANs, and EasyMesh brings that to the home network. EasyMesh is a flexible deployment model, and it has flexible deployment capabilities for the controller. It can be integrated, the controller can be integrated with the Wi-Fi AP like the figure on the left, or it can be a standalone controller like the figure on the right, often embedded in the gateway. It can also be fully implemented locally in the home LAN like the left figure, where all the functions are performed in the home, or its functionality can be split between the cloud and the home LAN, like in the figure on the right. So the other thing is EasyMesh does not define the controller algorithms that specify the behavior of the system, such as, when to steer a client or how to choose the channels that the APs use. Instead, these algorithms are left up to the vendors and operators to define, and that allows customization and vendor differentiation. And these algorithms don't have to be located in the LAN only. They can be, some of them could be in the LAN, some of them could be implemented in the cloud. So if we go to the next slide, we can talk about why would you use EasyMesh? And then also, by extension, data elements. Because data elements is another Wi-Fi Alliance program that standardizes the key performance indicators for Wi-Fi in the home. And it allows service providers the ability to manage that Wi-Fi and understand what's going on in the home. So first of all, what are the benefits for the end user? If you're like me, you want to have Wi-Fi everywhere in the house. You don't want to have any dead spots. You want to also be able to use it outside, maybe in your backyard, in your garage. And so EasyMesh, with its multi-AP capabilities, allows you to cover the entire home with Wi-Fi. You want to be able to walk around through the home without having dropouts or without buffering if you happen to walk and watch videos at the same time and are coordinated enough to do that. You want to be able to install a new AP yourself without having to have your service provider come out. So this allows easy self-install and makes it much easier for the service provider. It also, you would like to have any issues you see with Wi-Fi fixed before you even notice them. And that's one of the benefits, both for an operator and for you. Your Wi-Fi just works, and if there's a problem that starts to develop, the operator can see that problem and fix it. On the operator side, EasyMesh gives you interoperability between vendors, not only between controller vendors and agent vendors, but you can also have multiple agent vendors in the same home. So it gives you full visibility into what's going on into that Wi-Fi environment in the home. You can see all of the KPIs. You can understand how many retries you're seeing, if you have interference going on, if you have trouble clients, all of that is visible. And it gives you the ability to do proactive network maintenance on the full home Wi-Fi environment. So if we go to the next slide. So this slide's a little bit more technical, but it shows the high-level home Wi-Fi management architecture that allows operators to monitor and manage the Wi-Fi in the home to ensure the excellent performance of Wi-Fi and fix potential problems before they happen. So if you look at the figure on the left, which is the home, and the cloud on the right, which is the operator network, you see that data elements KPIs are flowing from the gateway up to the network, which represents all of the measurements being taken by the EasyMesh system. So the EasyMesh controller collects those data elements KPIs from the EasyMesh agents, which are located in the APs. And then the data elements agent in the gateway retrieves those from the controller and sends those up to the cloud. And that's what allows the operator to understand and see exactly what's going on in the home. And then the operator, if they have functionality in the cloud, they can actually make changes to the EasyMesh gateway or to the EasyMesh controller, which then propagate through all the agents. And we'll go to the next slide. So finally, I want to switch gears just a bit and speak about what CableLabs sees coming in the future for Wi-Fi in the home. We'll see some of these within the next 2 years. Other ones will be further out, and we'll probably see them later. So in a future with 5G wireless that we all hear about, we still believe that Wi-Fi will remain a dominant access technology, especially for in-home and in-building wireless. And protocols such as Wi-Fi 6 and 802.11ay will bring multi-gigabit throughput all the way to the wireless devices, like Adeline talked about. When you have gigabit internet service to the home, or even in the future multi-gigabit, the users that pay for that will expect that speed all the way to their wireless device. So Wi-Fi 6, we expect will bring better capacity, higher aggregate throughput, lower latency, better range, and all of these will be done and delivered using multi-access technology, which is called OFDMA. It really introduces a paradigm shift for Wi-Fi and we're pretty excited to see the benefits that it will bring to the end users. 802.11ay will provide greater than 20 gigabits per second in-room throughput using millimeter wave frequencies. And with advanced antenna technology, we may also be able to use it to provide very high-speed wireless links between the APs in the home, removing the requirement of wires between the APs to provide up to 10 gigabit or beyond wireless service everywhere in the home. Finally, 10G platform is a group of technologies from cable operators that will provide better speed, over 100 times more than what most people have today, and 10 times the highest current speeds being delivered today. Higher capacity, lower latency, better security and reliability for the home. Some of these technologies are 10 gigabits full duplex DOCSIS, low latency DOCSIS, low latency mobile backhaul, and finally micronets. And micronets brings a dynamic micro segmentation for network security in the home, and also small businesses, including IoT security. All of us have probably heard about botnet attacks created using poorly secure IoT devices. And IoT security is only going to become more important as the number of IoT devices in our home explodes in the coming years. Micronets is a SDN solution that CableLabs has developed and we're trying to bring to market. So that's all I had for today. Thank you for joining the webinar. I look forward to your questions at the end. And back to you, Adeline.
Thank you, John. Excellent presentation. Let's move on to Robin Mersch, who's the CEO of the Broadband Forum. Robin, the floor is yours. If you can unmute yourself.
Yep, thank you, Adeline. Afternoon, everyone, or morning if you're on the other side of the US. I'll say a little bit about the Broadband Forum sort of first for those of you that don't know us. We're an industry standards organization, obviously in the broadband space. We are particularly focused on how you deliver a quality broadband in the most effective way. So this is a consortium between operators, hardware vendors, software vendors, you know, the whole of the supply chain. So why are we particularly interested in Wi-Fi? Well, I think, Adeline, you picked up on all of those issues very effectively. And if I could also echo what sort of John said, we would agree that there really has to be a focus on Wi-Fi, because this is the way that most consumers are experiencing and consuming broadband. But the issue is, how do they do this in the most effective way? And from a operator perspective, the question has always been around how do you take a more consumer focused technology and turn it into sort of something which is effective from the operator point of view, and then obviously give good customer experience to that end user. So that's why we've been particularly focused. So if you can go to the next slide. So TR398, so TRs are Broadband Forum specifications. It's our kind of designation for them. The area we were trying to sort of focus in for this particular technical report, so this is a quite wide-ranging specification around Wi-Fi in-premises testing. So we had something like 16 companies were involved contributing directly, so between operators, manufacturers, and test manufacturers. Looking at these particular areas, so these are the kind of broad areas that we define to be of highest interest for the operator community. So coverage, so as it says, you know, range versus rate, RF performance, so for receive sensitivity, bandwidth and the maximum number of stations and throughput, stability, interference, and lastly capacity. So if you take the next click, Adeline. So for RF performance, so it was the ability to receive weak signals, and inside that box, obviously I'm not going to read this out, you can see for yourself examples of the kind of parameters that we came up with. The same in the bandwidth area for maximum throughput. Same for stability in terms of long-term stability under stress, and the kind of deviations we were looking for. Interference and the kind of loss parameters that we could agree, capacity, and obviously lastly in terms of coverage. You know, there was other sort of things kind of sort of came into to this, you know, too much to explain on one slide. I would definitely encourage you to go to the website. This is a publicly available document, as are all of the BBF specifications. So next slide. So how to use TR398. So these test cases, we haven't really come through yet to developing a completely, how do I sort of put it, this kind of sort of completely sort of developed sort of test plan. There are, you know, there's some ongoing work at the Broadband Forum. However, TR398 can be used as is. There are 11 test cases kind of covered. There are various pass criteria which are specified, and some of them you can see here. We would suggest that you use these as a baseline in terms of developing, you know, your own products. We have suggestions in terms of best practice. So as you can see on the bottom right here, that you do it obviously in a controlled environment, and we can certainly point you at test labs that are members of the Broadband Forum, ones that have been involved, you know, intimately with the work as it's developed. There is one suggestion sort of like here, but this is purely an example. We have you know, other member test companies as well, but there is a way, as I say, that you can use this test plan immediately, and so in some places this has already been used. This is a very new TR, so it's part of the reason why I kind of put it this way. This has only just been published, but it's already being used in some test environments. So next slide. So this slide, I'm not going to go into sort of too much detail here because I don't want to steal any thunder from our partners at the Purple Foundation. So I know that Mirko is going to go a bit more into sort of detail here, but I suppose this also echoes some of what sort of John was sort of saying. We're also very interested in the EasyMesh solutions, and we have been, or recently have partnered at the back end of last year with the Purple Foundation in developing this open source project. So some of the work is originating actually between both organizations. Purple are doing some initial steps with developing the platform. We will take this forward into how we develop the carrier class solution for EasyMesh. So this is developing a lot of the add-ons for, you know, management and deployment of the solution, and something we certainly will talk with sort of cable labs as we go forward. You know, it's interesting that really the sort of problem is so similar, isn't it? You know, between the different broadband players, you know, really whether you're an MSO or you're a wireline provider, you know, the story is really very similar. So it's good to sort of see the industry progressing through to some really standardized solutions. But what we really need to do is really get this into the market, and that's really what we're focused on here with the Purple Foundation. So next slide. Now to sort of, you know, to sort of end up, and I don't want to kind of rush over this sort of too much, because, you know, I've mentioned the Purple Foundation related sort of project already, but there's one element that we really don't have sort of time to go into sort of detail, but the user services platform is the successor protocol to TR69. So probably the most widely deployed device management solution in the broadband wireline area. USP has been developed as a successor to that, specifically looking at how you deploy IoT solutions and virtualized services solutions, because you're obviously sort of talking about vastly increased numbers. So scalability are issues. There are requirements that we were getting relating to TR69, which really needed a different approach. So we've developed USP, but very much with the idea that this should be a way of easily migrating from a TR69 solution. So I'd very much encourage you to sort of go and take a look at that. And that has a direct relationship to our Wi-Fi activity, because of course, you know, that's how the management is done for the broadband provider. So there's a close relationship between what we're doing with USP and what we're doing in the Purple Foundation project. There's also a couple of other things worth mentioning here, which also are close to the BBF. So quality of experience is another area we are just kicking off another round of work, looking at delving much deeper into measuring quality of experience and actually managing quality of experience. So there's some other interesting things I'd encourage you to look at. And then lastly, in the 5G area, another kind of big project for the sort of forum. So I think that, you know, there is a continuum sort of like here, and I would end by sort of saying, I definitely echo what sort of, you know, John says. Whatever, you know, we look at in the sort of future, I think it's hard not to see Wi-Fi playing a big role. Now, you know, there may be other technologies sort of coming in. You know, you've got that whole debate between 5G and Wi-Fi, but as I say, it's very hard not to sort of see Wi-Fi being a very big player. So all of the activities in the industry are extremely important, and I think you could sort of say not before time. You know, we absolutely need to be deploying technologies that resolve this issue. As Adelaine said at the sort of beginning, the numbers associated with these issues are huge, and so they need to be resolved. So thank you, Adelaine.
Well, thank you, Robin. Very enlightening. So we heard from Cable Labs about some R&D initiatives and work. Robin touched on the standards and network specifications. So now we're diving into software development with Mirko Lindner, who's the program director at the Purple Foundation. I know it's pretty late for you, Mirko, so we appreciate you being here, and the floor is yours.
Thank you. Yeah, good evening, everyone. It is indeed half an hour before midnight for me, so I hope that there are at least some Asian representatives on the call, so I'm not the only one who's awake at this late hour. So first of all, I want to thank everyone for participating in today's webinar, and of course, thank Adeline for organizing and hosting it. Before I dive into the details of the implementation of Purple Mesh, I want to just explain a little bit what the Purple Foundation is. And many of the members have already been mentioned, or at least the types of industry members that we have by the Broadband Forum and also Cable Labs. So we have silicon vendors, we have hardware manufacturers, software vendors who are specifically looking at middleware and CPE stacks, and of course we also have ISP members. And they're all coming together to kind of drive open source reference implementation of CPE services or APIs, where we're looking at how to make services in general a bit more mobile across the different software stacks and different hardware platforms. And then we're also looking at implementing wider frameworks that can be used to develop future devices or services in the future and open up new revenue streams and all of that. Let's talk a little bit about the thesis that is underlying the open source development that we do in the Purple Foundation. And it's a relatively simple principle where if we look at the left-hand side, the usual development model that we find out there is you take any number of companies, they all develop the same common features, they each have one security department, and they all develop then some differentiating features. That's how you find it today. In the model that we at Purple are proposing, which is not invented by us, but at least we're following it and we're trying to bring it to new areas. We say, let's develop the common features together once. And then also let's have the same, or let's have a joint security review, which in essence will increase the security of those common features by the number of companies that are participating. And in the end, that will actually unlock development resources for every individual company that is participating. Of course, this only works if collaboration starts in the beginning and not only at the end of the development cycle. Otherwise, you end up with multiple implementations of the same. But in Purple, we are working with our member companies to actually detect these common features very, very early on, and then get a group of interested parties together and develop one common solution to make sure that going forward, everyone can actually benefit and focus on what really matters, and that's the differentiating features for customers and consumers out there. In the EasyMesh case, that is, as we've heard before, very much focused on the EasyMesh agent itself, the underlying protocol, and then also the driver integration. Those are the common features that are here summarized as Purple Mesh, which is the name of the project, as Robin already mentioned, where we're collaborating with the Broadband Forum and also with Cable Labs and of course, partners from the industry, as you can see here at the bottom, the supporters. I have to apologize, this slide is slightly outdated, so I should mention also that SmartLG, Atran, and Technicolor are also very active supporters of the Purple Mesh effort. What we're looking at developing, as I mentioned, is the non-differentiating part. So what we will come up with in the end, or what was the ultimate goal, is an implementation of the R1 and hopefully later on the R2 feature set of EasyMesh that can then be used on RDKB, on OpenWRT, or on other platforms without much effort, without much porting effort. And then on top of that, the APIs that Robin already mentioned will enable any ISP or hardware manufacturer, or software manufacturer, silicon vendor to develop their own controller, and those controllers can then be local or remote as well. And all of that code is available under the BSD Plus patent license, which makes it very easy for any company to adopt it without problems in the legal review. I don't want to spend too much time looking at the architecture on the next slide, but just so that you get an idea of what we're dealing with. So on the right-hand side, you have all of the integration into the lower layers. You can see how we do driver control, and then there's a control block as well. The important part comes on the left side of the slide, where you can see that we have an integration block here with the operating system IPC, which can be on RDKB, on OpenWRT, or as I mentioned, on any other platform. And then to the left, you can have remote or local controllers that can, via very simple APIs and standardized APIs, so these will be the same across the different implementations, can actually control all of the EasyMesh devices in your network. And everything that you find in Purple on this slide will be available as open source under the PSD license, as I mentioned before. And then just very briefly on the last slide, how that fits into the wider realm of what Purple does. So you see Purple Mesh here highlighted on the right. And then we also have other projects, as I mentioned. We have the low-level API where we're looking at multiple BSPs from different silicon vendors and see how we can make it easier to integrate projects such as Purple Mesh or stacks in general. On top, we have an effort going on to see how we can standardize containers and enable new business models across different hardware vendor stacks, software stacks, and then also how we can decouple third-party development, third-party feature development to enable faster rollout. And then at the very top, we have what we call the software stack independent API, where, for example, in the Purple Mesh project specifically, we're collaborating with the Broadband Forum to make sure that you have all of the APIs available that you need for carrier class management right there in your Purple Mesh implementation. And just a last word here on the thesis. Now, can you go back just one slide, yeah. Sorry, the side on the left here. So why do we believe that it makes sense to not only have standards, but to do standard and open source, basically a reference implementation? And the focus here is really to say that you get all of the advantages from the standard, but then it's a lot faster for you to adopt new standards if you have a reference implementation on top. It's easier for your vendors to come up with differentiating features if they don't first have to develop all of the basic stacks. And then, of course, maintenance going forward is going to be a lot less resource intensive for every company because we can do joint maintenance of those common features. Yeah, that's what I wanted to highlight here. Thank you.
Thank you, Mirko. Appreciate a lot of details and material in your presentation, and hopefully we'll address some of the questions during the Q&A. So last but not least, Thiago Rodriguez, General Manager of the WBA, is going to present some of the work that the association is doing on helping operators with guidelines and blueprints and other good stuff. So the floor is yours, Thiago.
Thank you, Adlan. Hello, everyone. So just want to start by once more, thank you, Adlan, for setting up this webinar. This is a great group of people. That's a great panel. Thank you for taking the lead and inviting the Wireless Broadband Alliance and myself to be here today. Before I start with my slides, I just want to give a very brief introduction to the Wireless Broadband Alliance, or WBI. So we are an industry body that we are mainly have a group of operators and technology providers as our members. And our main goal is to improve the services delivery and the quality of experience for Wi-Fi and adjacent technologies that can be relevant in that specific use case. We address, of course, as you can imagine, the in-home Wi-Fi, but we work as well in public Wi-Fi hotspots area and as well in the enterprise Wi-Fi. My presentation today is going to be focusing on a recent document that the Alliance released that we call the in-home Wi-Fi Guidelines. This document that in fact is public, if any of you have any interest, you guys can download it from our website. Our goal is really to have a set of guidelines for operators that can have somehow demystify many of these innovations, new options and new technologies that are coming out to improve the quality of experience within the in-home broadband space. So that's the main goal of this document. Within the document, we identified a set of challenges that we believe are relevant to be addressed. We identify as well some best practices for the deployment of multi-AP solutions. You can see on the slide some of the companies that have been involved or were involved on the creation of this document. So companies like, for example, Cable Labs that is here on the panel as well, or Liberty Global or Intel, they all contributed to this document. The document, as you can see, covers quite a large spectrum. I don't want to get in much details, but you can see that we cover some recommendations in terms of architecture. We look into the end-to-end security, look into some improvements in the security. We have as well a section on the radio resource management, what are the mechanisms and the options available to improve and harmonize the radio management. Then another section about the onboarding and how to manage devices. And as you can imagine, this has a closer relation with the growing IoT market. And how can we address and prepare the home networks to to be in line to address that pressure of having more services and more devices attached to the local network. Then we have as well a section on performing trials and testing, and in fact, the work that Robin mentioned about from Broadband Forum on performance testing is well covering that section as well. So it's an area that we in WPA and our members see as quite relevant. And then we have as well a section in terms of future work that we may cover, and I have just a few more inputs on that in another slide. So let's move to the next slide, please. So on this slide, I want to highlight that probably a few months ago, we did some research within the industry. We identified some of the most relevant use cases for the in-home space. You guys can see it on the graphic. Things like managed Wi-Fi services or private network user control or guest network in the in-home. So all these use cases, in fact, are covered on this report, on this guidelines report. You can see the 7 use cases that we cover. So I think it's a good starting point into starting to deep dive on these use cases and understand what are the options and the technologies that exist nowadays. And John and Mirko and Robin spoke just about some of those options and solutions. I think it's a good way to do a deep dive on these use cases. The next slide, I want to highlight 4 elements that within the Alliance we believe there is still some room to explore and further discussions are needed within the industry, and we believe that there is room for additional work not only between the 4 organizations that are here today, but as well even with others organizations, including, for example, the Wi-Fi Alliance. So these 4 elements the first one is about the end-to-end security. So have that entire journey from the Wi-Fi client until the core of the network and the different network elements to make sure that everything is secure and the operators can deliver their services in a fully secure way. The second one is further discussing into the multi-AP solutions. So John mentioned some of these features, so band steering or AP steering, so channel selection management. So many of these capabilities that are coming on these multi-AP solutions, so need to be tested, validated, understand if there is any additional gaps that need additional work, but definitely it's an area that we see as a very good opportunity to continue to do some work. The third area is about devices onboarding and the provisioning of devices in the home space. With the growth of the IoT opportunities and having more connected elements in the home, I think definitely we as an industry, we need to put our efforts together, understand what type of devices, what type of technologies that we want to have on the in-home space, and make sure that that onboarding process is automated. It's as much seamless as possible to the end user, and at the same time can be scalable, and from the perspective of operations, it can be managed as well. The fourth point is about a more practical element, that is the deployment of the networks itself in the in-home environment. It's great to have all these new capabilities and new technologies, but at the end of the day, it's very important as well the way that we organize the network in the in-home, so each customer is able to position the APs or the AP in the right locations with the right orientations and setups to make sure that we can optimize the coverage, and by doing that we increase the quality of experience, the satisfaction of the customer. That is the main goal behind all these improvements in terms of delivering a better service in the home. My last slide, I just want to raise a couple topics in terms of the future of the work of the Alliance. So one of the areas that we are right now discussing among the membership is to work in terms of trials with multi-AP solutions, trying to bringing the expertise that already exists in the industry, but bring it to a simulation of a live environment of the home. And the other one is related with what I said about the evolution of the home network for the IoT era, and what are the improvements in terms of technology, capabilities, architectures that need to be set up for the operators to be confident in deploying their IoT or additional services for the in-home. And just to finalize, if you guys are interested in this type of topics that WBI is working on, just want to highlight that we have our next event in Atlanta, US in May. We have our open Wireless Global Congress. If you guys are interested, please join. Many of the companies behind this work will be there. And of course, if you really want to get more involved with the WBI, you can always consider to join, and all the information is available online. So thank you so much for your time, everyone, and looking forward for any potential questions.
Thank you, Thiago. Now I'm impressed by all the speakers delivering their message on time. We were able to deliver 40 slides in record time here. And so it gives us a good solid 10 minutes for Q&A. Before I do that, just want to mention that I'll be chairing a home Wi-Fi summit in Frankfurt on September 25 to 26. Same guys that did the Wi-Fi Innovation Summit. So if you're interested in joining us to discuss home Wi-Fi issues, this is an opportunity. So perhaps first question here, kind of a logical question to all of this discussion is, and I would like to invite my panelists to unmute themselves, is, how can, CPE vendors or gateway vendors differentiate themselves in light of all of these open source and standardization efforts? Perhaps starting with you, Mirko.
Yeah, I think it actually, rather than making it more complicated, it makes it a lot easier, because the standardization and open source efforts are actually targeting the baseline and the lowest layers of the areas where hardware manufacturers or manufacturers in general can differentiate. So we actually give them, or by adopting open source solutions, they can actually gain 33 to 50% in terms of time to market if they adopt the right solutions. So I think it's rather helpful because their teams can then focus on actually building what differentiates their solution, rather than having to spend time to build and QA what everyone else has as well.
Okay. Is there a risk for a lock-in still, for perhaps on the cloud side of things, where some of the vendors are, pretty much saying, everything that has to do with on-premise management is open source, but then what the controller talks to the cloud in a proprietary way? Isn't that a risk of a different sort of a lock-in for the service providers? And we have a lot of service providers, by the way, attending today.
So if you're still asking me, I believe that somewhere you also have to leave room for the vendors to actually differentiate. So this would not only go for cloud-based components, but you can also have closed source components that actually run on the CPE. I think that is fine, as long as you can actually, as an ISP, exchange those services very easily. Then there's no chance for for lock-in, but rather for competition between the different solutions.
If I could make a point there, Adelaine, because
yes,
you know, so this is one of the sort of things that I think is particularly strong for the USP platform. That's basically one of the ideas. You know, this is an open platform, and you know, the very idea of kind of lock-in would go against that that general sort of like principle. So, you know, I mean, I mean, if you ask the sort of question just generally in the industry, is there chances of lock-in of one kind of or another? You know, well, you know, yes, there's always going to be that sort of danger. So it really sort of speaks loudly, though, to why you go for standardized solutions. So the more, you know, open the interfaces, you know, the more you're sort of driving interoperability, you know, the more, you know, you're going to mitigate that risk. But I would certainly encourage people, you know, to look at USP quite sort of seriously. You know, obviously from the management perspective, you know, what it is enabling. You know, that's a really worthwhile sort of first step.
Well, since you're mentioning USP, Robin, there's a question for you there. And a gentleman asking, is USP intended to remotely manage a Wi-Fi mesh solution, meaning signal the steering of a client?
Yeah, well, we're actually we're already working on that on those data models. It's so I would actually, I think we're looking at maybe summertime, maybe sort of like late summertime, that data model will be available. You know, there's still some discussion ongoing. There's still some things we're resolving, but absolutely, you know, that's definitely been one of the requirements we've been working on. So I would say watch this space, and as soon as it's available, again, it'll be publicly available on the BBF website.
Okay, great. John, I have a question for you. Where does Bluetooth and Zigbee fit into Wi-Fi? Or I guess the more general question is, what other technology than Wi-Fi have some role to play in the home, I guess?
Yeah, that's a really good question. I mean, I think that Bluetooth and Zigbee are going to remain as technologies. Bluetooth, especially with personal devices and, you know, devices that we wear, is really the dominant and makes really good sense. And with Zigbee and, you know, there's other technologies as well in the home. For IoT devices that need very low power, it's a really good technology. And I don't think that that's really going to go away. There are some low technology or low power Wi-Fi technologies like Halo that are also going to be interesting in this space, but I think that that's going to remain in the home, and that's not really going to go away. The follow-on question is, you know, how do they interact and do they cause any issues with each other? That's a bigger topic than we want to go into probably.
Okay, great. I want to make sure that I address the question to you, Tiago, as well. Generally speaking, there's a lot of talk about 5G. You know, it was mentioned as a potential competitor to Wi-Fi. What do you see the role of 5G in the home Wi-Fi or in the home?
Yeah, big question, Atlan. And yeah, the way that I can position that is definitely Wi-Fi will maintain its dominance in the home. Where 5G can enter is to fill some gaps or challenges that may exist. And a big question is how to converge between the Wi-Fi and the home broadband and the 5G type of services. So that's a path that the industry still need to continue to work. But one element that I would like to bring to this discussion is something that is referenced on the WBI report, but as well John talked a little bit about today, is on the data element. So the capacity to monitor the home environment, for the networks at the core level to have a better understanding of what is happening in the home environment space, and somehow trigger any actions from the operator in terms of optimizing the end user experience. And this, in fact, brings a lot of challenges, and in fact brings the challenge of how to interoperate with 5G or Bluetooth or Zigbee. That's one element that I think it's important to be addressed.
Mm. This is an important question. Do other panelists want to add to Thiago's comments?
So this is Robin. I mean, this is a very open question, isn't it? It's, I think in a lot of ways, the market's going to tell us, isn't it? The role of Wi-Fi certainly is, I would agree, is going to still be very important within the home and in premises. But exactly how this develops with 5G, I think anyone's guess is as good as another. But it is hard to sort of see with so larger deployments of Wi-Fi that's really going to change significantly. The only proviso to this is the performance issue, though. That's assuming that we resolve all of those performance issues. Because there is a certain expectation, isn't there, with connectivity, and that's the reason why it becomes such a big issue to the operator, is that, the customer doesn't really think of it being Wi-Fi necessarily. I mean, sometimes they'll refer to it, but they certainly think of it as being, it's an operator issue, so that's why the operator gets those calls. So if you start to see that kind of go away, I don't sort of see why the consumer would necessarily sort of, jump to it. I mean, of course, there are also commercial issues that we can't really maybe comment on, here, because we're not in those roles. But there is that whole kind of part of it, which is going to be kind of business case driven.
Right. Any other comments? Okay, we have a question from an anonymous attendee, but I'm sure we can guess who they represent. Does the panel see OpenSync as a competitor to standards like EasyMesh, or is it complementary? I assume you are familiar with OpenSync.
Yeah, I can address that one. I think it's complementary. I think that the direction that EasyMesh is going is probably going to be in a way that OpenSync can work with it. I talked a little bit about that in my slides, how the controller can be split, and then the algorithms of the controller can be nearly anywhere. And you can imagine eventually EasyMesh may be able to work with OpenSync. So that's my take on it.
Okay. Any other comments on that question? Okay. So, I mean, we're almost on top of the hour here, so maybe we have perhaps time for one last question. Let's see. This one's pretty specific. Let's see. If data elements can be used to remotely manage and monitor a mesh network, how does that fit into the picture together with USP, which from what I could also understand could also help close that gap? That's a very specific question. I want to take that to Robin, or?
Yeah, I actually just pinged back on that question. Let me get back to Zhao. I appreciate the sort of like question, but this sort of gets into a whole kind of another level. It's not a sort of quick answer. I think I'll follow up offline on that one if that's okay.
Okay, yeah, sure, no problem. So perhaps some final thoughts here before we close the webinar?
No, I can share, I think, a final thought that I think all the panelists agreed on, that definitely Wi-Fi will continue to be the incumbent technology in the in-home space. And as you could see, that there is significant number of improvements and innovations and new technologies coming up.
Great. Well, any other comments, thoughts? Well, it's been a pleasure to welcome you guys. It's been a fantastic panel and presentations, a lot of material. I want to thank also all the attendees for taking the time. I know we have pretty busy schedules. We'll make the material available in the next 24 hours, and see you again soon, perhaps at the WBA event or some other event in the future, including ours in Frankfurt. Thank you very much, everyone. Thank you, panelists.
Thank you, Edwin.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.